I don't know if this is working, so you're hearing fine. There it is. Why isn't this working? Alright guys, looks like I've got my live feed actually working. I can see this. I don't know about the comments. I'm trying to do two things at once. So bear with me on this. If you have questions, put them down here in the comments and I'll answer it. But I almost wanted to say, hey, just let me turn this down, volume all the way. So, there we go. I thought about actually running for governor of Oklahoma. I thought I'd start it this way because I know no one's on here to watch. And I've got a 3-problem plan. And this may sound totally illogical, but let me. So here's what I'm going to do. Like, I would like 3 problems to be solved. So I'd almost like to run for governor just for these 3 problems. And hear me out, because I know it's going to sound insane and or stupid. Here's the 3 problems I want to solve. The first one is just that telemarketers and telephone calls drive me right up the freaking wall. So if I became the governor of Oklahoma, I'd make it way illegal to do half the stuff that they do now. Like, you couldn't ghost a number, so I couldn't get a number from Oilton, Oklahoma, saying, hey, I'm this business, would you like a line of credit or whatever that they keep doing. So that's my first problem I'd solve. Second problem I would solve would be no semis in the passing lane, period. Unless, the only way they can get in the passing lane is if they're going 15 miles an hour. Like, the car they're passing is going 15 miles an hour under the speed limit. Otherwise, they can't be in the passing lane unless they're, of course, to get around a cop or something. And then the third thing was it'd make it illegal to tip someone if you have to walk up to a counter. It drives me nuts. But now that I got some people here, looks like I've got some comments. Ask your questions and I will answer. Sup, homie. David Stevenson, challenging motor. I watched your, oh dang, these are going fast. I watched your motor, this is from LXU. I watched your pocket porting LS3 and I'm wondering if the short side radius is done the same on that 243. Similar but not quite the same. There's little things that you just do differently. It would be impossible for me to explain this on a live feed. There's just more that goes into it. It's almost like you'd have to be here. And yes, I would like to do a porting class, but I don't know whenever I have time anymore. So there's that one. I'm sorry it's not a better answer. It's probably not what you're wanting to hear. What heads are you using for the small block Ford Can Challenge? The Trick Flow 240 high ports. I'll be doing some additional port work with those. That's been in other videos as well. There'll be a 2125 intake valve and a 1600 exhaust valve. Leonard Cherry, need the Grim Reaper. Ain't no kidding. Can you do a video of the short side radius on the 243? Probably not, because there's none in your report. And I'll tell you why. No offense to the LS guys, are kind of cheap. And so I charge $1,400 for a full port job. So the idea that someone would send me a set of stock heads for me to do that port job on, there's only ever been like a few that's done that. So probably won't get a video on it because it's not coming in. Next question from Joe Gasper. In your opinion, is the best oval port big block Chevy head for a stock bore 454? What is your best one? It kind of depends on the RPM range. So for instance, the Trick Flow 280 is great down low, but probably the AFR 290, 300 is probably better for the higher RPM stuff. Key parts. Do you have any target date for the small block Ford parts? No. I have more small block Chevy parts at this point than I do small block Ford parts, and the small block Ford's supposed to be next. So just to kind of explain, and don't blame anybody for this. Kuntz is working on the short block now. I think they're almost done. And it'll be a 427. Once I get all that, I'll have that specs. They're also welding up the water ports on the heads, and they're also O-ringing the heads so that I could just change the intake without having to worry about water so much being in it. That's taking some time. Once that gets back to me, then I'll do the port work on the head. I can get those measurements out, and then those will be available. So it seems like I'm stalling on the small block Ford stuff because I don't have the information to give you. Once it's in hand, it does. If it's a small block Chevy, I know exactly what heads because they're sitting up there on the bench. They're done. I've got the titanium valves for them. I've got the block sitting over here, and I'm waiting for other stuff. Truthfully, and several people have mentioned it, and I probably should have done it. I probably should have had the small block Chevy cam first, then the small block Ford, because it's taking longer on Ford. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to read through these. Eric Weingartner, this is from Eric McMahon. Did you tell us a while back you would try to use a cylinder combustion monitoring on engines? If so, what brand? Who would help to interpret the data? I was going to try working with Tom Bigew to do it, but it requires so much money because if you watch Ben Strader's video, he talks about how expensive those probes are. They're $5,000, so 5,000 times 8, that's $40,000. That seems insane. Do I think it would help? Yes, but I got someone's got to pay for it. And I'll give you just to tell you this, and I know I go off in tangents a lot. The accountant just got done doing the books for last year. So the business made $372,000. So I probably shouldn't even tell you that, but that's how much it brought in total sales. $23,000 of that was spent on the dyno. $23,000. So I don't know. You look at the R&D costs for that. That's insane. Just for the record, $22,000 was spent at FedEx. So I'm not going to pay $40,000 for some sensors. Save Stevens, cam lift limit. David, you really should watch some of the other videos, but it's 780. Austin Reed, is there a valve diameter to bore ratio that you recommend? This is a me thing and not necessarily a universal thing. I like the biggest valve I can get in, and here's why. You just have more potential is the best way I could put it. If you look at the four valve per cylinder heads, they have way more valve area than the two, so why not go with a bigger one? The only downside with the bigger valve on the 2-valve stuff is your velocity. You get it really big and it just doesn't, the velocity's down, but you got to get air in there. So I don't have an exact limit. I think there's rules like 52% that some people use, and most of the time you're just at the limit of the head. So say for instance a small block Chevy, even small block Ford, you can only go so big. Otherwise you're going to cut down the exhaust valve, just the way the placements are. Okay. Austin Reed, did the cam challenges prove the pipe max system or whatever you used is worth the money? I actually used performance trends, and I never went back and actually looked at that thoroughly to see how it matched. But I don't think it followed exactly or even close to it. So I would say it gave you a rough outline. It doesn't give you exact. So I know some of the people that are probably entering the small block Ford cam challenge are probably going to try to use that. It will help them, but it won't be exact. Norman Duncan, good to hear from you, buddy. Is the small block still together? It depends on which one you're talking about. The one that I was trying to blow up, yeah, it's still together. If I had wastegates and some other stuff, I'd probably put it on the turbo. I did buy from ATM that carburetor so I could do some more testing. Luckily, they cut me a really great deal because it's an expensive carburetor. And I was hoping somebody would have watched the LS video and it would have said, oh my gosh, there is no difference between the LS and the small block Chevy because the carburetor for the LS was $2,300. For the small block Chevy was $2,300 retail. The Dominator for the LS alone was $2,500. The injectors were over $8,000. Anyway, but no one ever spot on that. But I bought the carburetor, so I'm going to do some more. As soon as I get the other pieces, then right now is like the worst time to buy stuff because I gotta keep the money I have for the Ford challenge. So in case there's parts that someone doesn't donate or whatever, I gotta buy them to put it together. So anyway, there's that. James Roberts, is it just me? The volume keeps going in and out. I don't know because I can't hear it. I'm thinking about putting in my earbuds. If I'm having problems with the volume, let me know and I will put these in. Maybe it'll help. Larry Lee, what induction system for a street 427 small block, mile to wild? Drive no more than 2,000 to 3,000 miles per year. It's really a vague question. It really depends on what your budget is and other things. I don't know that I have an exact answer. It's probably best to email me that one because that's a long form question. LXU, is there a difference between the short side radius on the LS3 head to a 243, or the head similar? They're different. They're different. Raymond Goshen, how can you make the ProMax LS3 big valve head for the LS3, and at what price? Will they be as good as the new Brodix BR7? I could port the ProMax. I've done that before. They go like 370s. I've tried a lot, but I haven't been really. They still aren't beating AFR stuff. So, and I'm not sure about the Brodix BR7. That's a different world. You're comparing an LS3 to an LS7 head. It's not really the same. Eric McMahon, will you be testing any more on Charles Tavino's intake for the LS? He just bought the truckload of them. No, I actually sent that one back to him. There's a customer here that I'm porting a Victor Jr. for a LS3 head, and I might ask him if I could use it, and then I might put the 408 LS dyno back on the dyno and just try that intake. Although it's really expensive just to test one intake. Okay, Austin Reed. Oh, sorry. Dave Stevens, on trends, good info or good info out? Okay. Austin Reed, what would you consider to be the threshold below which an intake valve could be lightened for a small block? I don't have an answer for that either. I don't like being vague, because without any testing, I'm just like anybody that's out there on the internet just giving guesstimates and claiming to know it all. So I don't know. The lightest I've gone was like some of the 7mm stuff, especially on the sprint cars. That's when we did that. I should say the ASCS stuff. They were 7mm, which I'm not sure, depending on where you're at, if it's legal or not. But that's probably the lightest valve I've ever done. This one's the next question. I think you mentioned once that you don't like the seat material on the AFR Enforcer. Am I recalling this correctly? Is the seat material the same? Better option for a mild street build? It's not that the seat material is bad on the LS3 Enforcer head. It's just hard to machine. It's that copper alloy. And it's just hard to machine. It machined perfectly. It looks beautiful. It's just, it can get a lot of run out because it's trying to deflect your tooling. The sound is better when your hand was at your ear. Huh. Raymond Goshen, what else do you need to get the turbo kit ready for the LS test? I don't know that I'm going to put the turbo on the LS. I need the turbo for the small block Chevy. Surprise attack. So you have any phone numbers for the 461X heads? No, I don't. I still have yet to see one in my lifetime. I'm waiting for them to do that. It sounds like the microphones are switching back and forth between them. I'm going to put in my earbuds. I'm not sure this will solve the problem. Put in the comments if it does. Maybe it'll hear better. So, okay, can you hear me any better? And here's something else too. Daniel, yes, I got the mics and everything. They came in yesterday. You know what they didn't include? The cable for the phone. So otherwise I'd be using that mic right now. Sorry about that. Oh, your Apple Watch is linked to your phone. That may be an issue. Well, that's an easy one. All right. How much more should an intake manifold flow over an head? An intake manifold will never flow more than the head. Sorry. At Lucky, you'll have it flow the same. Tunnel rams are about the closest you're going to get. What are your air speeds on an LS3 heads, and what do you try to shoot for? That's from Eric McMahon. You know, this might shock you, but I rarely use a pitot tube anymore. Once you've done enough, what I do is I port them to size. So I'll start with the bowl first, and I'll make it a certain percent. Then I do the throat certain percent. And the short side, I usually get that at a certain area, like it's a certain percent from what the throat or bowl is, depending on the head too. And usually that gives you the short side speed that you want. There's always variations. Hard to dang.
Okay, what do you need for the turbo small block Chevy? I have the headers and I have the turbos. That's all I have. I don't have the wastegates, blow off valve, any of that. Oh, curse this thing. Will you port 4-cylinder cast iron International Scout heads, Joe Carroll? No. I'm not going to read your name. What is more important when setting up roller rocker geometry? The rocker being perpendicular to the valve at half lift, or the roller tip being centered on the valve? That's totally wrong. Joe Carroll, who's actually in front of it, was one of the first ones that enlightened me to this. If you want to have your rocker set up right, what you do is you have the narrowest sweep pattern. That may not be in the center. It may be off to the one end or the other. The narrowest sweep pattern. That means that rocker is making the least amount of movement across the tip. That's what you want. It actually makes it easier to spin over the engine by hand too when you have it that way. And if it's easier for you to spin it over, it's easier on all the parts. So it's not centered. That's the internet baloney. Eric, do you think there's any point in flowing ahead at a higher depression or to better simulate depression they will actually see on an engine at peak torque? 99.4 inches waters, for example. On my CNC heads that I developed, like the Dragon Slayer and whatnot, those I float at 40 inches and 28 inches. What I want to see is whenever I flow them at 40 inches, even though it's correcting down to 28 inches, that it's still moving more air at 40 inches. So yes, it helps. Austin Reed, in your opinion, what is the best way to increase velocity and RPM? I don't know what you're asking on that one. You'd have to be more specific than that. On the LS243, is it better to have a 1.6 exhaust valve to gain the 70-75% from intake? No. And also, you'd have to change seats. So on a 243 head, you really can't. I think the biggest you can run, and don't quote me on this, is 1.570. But I think in that 243 one that I did on the dyno was a 1.55. I have a set of Dash 10 Brodex heads that are in bad need of valves, guides. They were built in 1984. Are they worth spending money on? No. Because if you look at the guides, they're like, this is what I charge. They're like $25 a guide plus $10 in labor for each guide plus a valve job. No. Okay, on blow off valve, 50 millimeter or 40 millimeter wastegate. Okay. I don't even know. That's the thing about this stuff. So I've got a good knowledge of cylinder heads and other stuff. No idea what size the wastegate needs to be. I don't know. And like people mentioned, like the turbo sizes, I think these are 84, 79 or something. I told it in the last video, but I don't even remember. I don't even know what that stuff means. That sounds stupid for a guy because I don't do turbos. So I'm just trying to get into this stuff so I can play with it and get better at it, I guess. The supercharged stuff's so easy because you just put it on. On a small block Chevy, what make you like a certain head the most, like size, shape you look for in a head to make it your favorite to port and have it flow amazing? One, am I going to hit water? That's the biggest one. So if I want to port a head and I know that the water's close on everywhere, I hate doing it. For instance, the AFR Enforcer, the old style, that dart imitation, 2 times in my career. So not the AFR ones, but they're just like it. Those heads have messed me up. So I went pushing them and they got water. They broke in. Matter of fact, there might be one right behind me. Yes, there is. It's this one right on the ground. Anyway, it broke through on the water. And because of their Chinese aluminum, it can't be welded. And trust me, my guy tried several times. It was a disaster. I even sent it to a professional shop, couldn't. So I spent more money on the welding on the head than the actual head cost and had to redo it. So that head I don't like. So it's, will I hit water? Does it have a vein? Well, that's the other one. Does it have a vein behind the guide? Because if it doesn't, it makes me think you're still developing heads from the 1980s. But anyway. All right. Sir, I have an oddball 2.8 with a blower, having a cam issues. Could I pick your brain for hours? No. There's probably better people to talk to about that than me. I'm not trying to be a dick. I don't think I could give you justice. I think I would have wasted your time. Logan Speed Shop. Have you ever messed with the GM fast burn small block Chevy aluminum heads? Always wondered if they're capable of. They've never come in, not once. And that also shocks me. I've yet in all my years of doing this, not once. Eric Weiner, do you ever port DI heads for Chevrolet? What differences are you looking for on air speeds for those? Great question. I haven't. I've got one sitting literally right behind me is an LT1 head that I was like, I'm going to flow this head. That was 2 years ago. I haven't flowed the head. I haven't imported the head. If I was to say if things went great this year for YouTube stuff or whatever, I was going to buy an LT engine just to put on the dyno to do some dyno testing with to see if it actually could beat the LS. But again, the small block Chevy does it too. I don't know. I just wanted to play with it. Next question. Do the Pro Max 317s come with 10-degree valve locks for Pro Max? It depends. If you get the sol roller stuff, yes. The hydraulic roller stuff, not necessarily. How do you know how to shape the short side radius? How do you know how far to lay it back, small block Chevys? Tons and tons of testing. So of all the heads I ported, obviously you could probably tell is the most of the small block Chevy. So I could even track back in years on how I would change the shape of what I was doing. So I'm probably giving away too much. There were times where I had the short side straight, so it just looked straight. And then there were times where I had it more angled up on one side, then I had it more angled up on the other, then it had a dip down. And that's where it's gotten that layback. That's probably one of the problems you're going to get into is really is if people could give like it should be 12 degrees or whatnot. It doesn't work that way. It really depends on how tall that short side is. So if you got a really short side, in other words, there's not a lot of height between that and the apex, and this is universal. Doesn't have to be a Chevy. Same thing can apply to any head. If you have it really short, you try laying it back like a 12 degree on something that's really short, you just killed it. But if it's a taller one, it's not as bad. I don't even measure that. So I know it sounds weird. If you saw me port, you'd be like, that makes sense. But it's hard to describe. But I took forever playing with that. And that's the other thing, too. It wasn't even the flow bench stuff. So the Dragon Slayers probably had the most development on that short side from years. So like it probably like every 3 years I would change it. But it would be dyno stuff that would give it away. And it proved out. Okay. All right. I think I went too far. I did. Valve shrouding. On an LS3, the exhaust valve shrouds. Yes, it does. Can you remove material around the valve to increase the flow and reduce shrouding? No, don't do that. The reason why it's shrouded is because the exhaust valve is so close to the bore. So if you remove material around that to unshroud it, you'd be getting into the actual sealing part. It's a bad idea. That exhaust port will flow good enough anyway. It's going to flow, if you port it right, it'll go through 230s, maybe even almost 240, I think, actually. So that's enough. You ain't got to worry about that. Would you be willing to do a valve job on one cylinder on a 706, a 202, 157, and flow it just to compare the numbers to stock 189, 155? I have a set lying around. Jared Fowler asked that question. You should go back and watch some of the older videos. Now, I'm not 100% certain on that, but I think I've done that in a video way, way, way back. So at the beginning almost. But I could do that. Mr. Carroll, have you ever ported any LS factory type intakes composite? No, because I'm so worried that I'll break through. So I haven't. I'm just going to say I think the 350 small block can hold more boost than the LS. I'm an LS kind of guy. What's your take on that? I think so too. Here's a crazy thought I had today too, though. So I'm trying to work with Summit to get a backup, another small block Chevy block so I could get my 406 dyno mill going. Or 421, depending on if we get a different rotating assembly. But because I was after the 350 got on the dyno with those superchargers, I was like, man, I really wonder what it would have done if it had been on the 406. But then I had another crazy thought. You know, everybody says that 400 small block Chevy block's weaker. I've got a 400 rotating assembly, except for the 400 mains. I'd have to use like main bearing spacers. But I thought about taking that rotating assembly, find a 400 small block, because I think Gary's got one, have him do it, do the same thing, and see if we can't destroy that block. Because then it's all forged internal, so the only thing that's going to be weak point would be the block. It'd be fun. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Really great one. E-Racing Regal, is the Dart Pro 1230 a good head and worth porting? Tony, that if you go back and watch my videos, he's the one I did that 406 with the AFR heads and made like 550 horsepower. He brought us a Dart Pro 1230cc heads, the Platinums. And I have seen them, but I couldn't remember what they flowed. They suck. They flow like 280s and 186s. Now, after porting, they'll be champion. But stock, they suck. Austering, it's my understanding that if you want an 8,000 RPM engine, you need a really lightweight, stable valve train. Excellent only, but what exactly has to be done to an as-cast head? You have to port it. There's a certain size, especially at the pushrod pinch or whatever your choke point is, to get it a certain size for the RPM you want to turn it. If you don't have that, it doesn't matter really what cam. I mean, you could band-aid it, but it's not ideal to get it to work right. Oh, man. Oh, shoot. Eric, I'm from Australia, so it's not economical for me to send heads to port, so I'm looking to doing them myself. That's why I'm asking about the short side. I appreciate that, buddy. It's just like, it's really hard to explain on a video. So maybe I need like a GoPro that's got up here so you can watch me grind it, because I wouldn't mind doing that. But you'd be like, that guy's an idiot. Because it's like, I always say it with a haircut, right? When you first start getting your haircut and they first start cutting away, you look like a monster, right? But when it's done, you look pretty good. And you're like, I'm a flashy guy. The same thing would happen with porting. You'd be like, that guy's a moron. Look what he's doing. It looks like crap. But then when it's all done, you're like, oh, it's amazing. All right. So that's what I'm trying to get at. I think if I tried recording myself porting that head, it'd be difficult. Anyway, on a 385 small block Chevy, which head should I run for street step? An AFR 195 or Project X 215? Ooh, that's a tough one. I wish I had my own dyno, because that's one of the tests I would like to see, because both of them flow about the same, and I'd be curious to see what type of power they make. But I can't. They're probably pretty close to the same. You're just going to save some money on the Project X. Eric Weiner, would you suggest trying to incorporate floor wing in conjunction with the bowl wing on the cathedral port heads? I haven't tried it on a cathedral port head yet, so I can't answer that one either. I don't think it works well on the cathedral port, but on an LS3, maybe. Tom, would organizing or co-organizing a head porting challenge ever interest you? No, and I think you might have mentioned this before. Let me explain why we can't do a head porting competition. You're like, it's because you'd lose. Probably, but that's not really it. If you asked me to enter a head porting competition, you said, pick a head. Let's say an Elderbrock head. Now let's do a better one. Let's say an AFR head. We'll say a 195. And you ask guys to enter that head. I know what you viewers are thinking is, that guy's just going to port the head and we're going to see how good the porting is. No, that's not what you'll find out. What you'll find out is, who is the most creative about changing things? Because if you asked me to do it and I had the ability, I'm going to pop those guides out. I'm going to put a aluminum sleeve in there. I'm going to move the guides. I'm going to move everything. And I'm going to move it to the best location ever. And then that head's going to be wicked, except for I have to have my own shaft rocker set up to make that work. So if you were trying to run that type of challenge, that means you have a shaft rocker set up for each one. So you measure, and then who's got the best valve train, who's got the best cylinder head. It gets really complicated. And you're like, well, just put in rules. Yeah, you could put in rules. I saw how that went for Engine Masters too. It's not as quite the same. However, I do have this one. So I'll give you this. This is for fun, because I got a okay on this. I'm just telling you guys now. I'm thinking about having a double hump head challenge, which is essentially your head porting one, because I'm thinking about using my 3-3 short block and Gray Finnegan, the guy that does the engine challenge, he said, yeah, I'll let you use my dyno. It sounds like fun. So I was like, sounds a great idea to me. So I thought, 5 people can send in a set of double hump heads, and I'll even do it myself. And yeah, I'm not afraid to lose. I'm gonna tell you, I'm probably gonna lose because I don't want to poke a hole. But yeah, we'll see which person has the most power with a set of double humps, and I think it'd be fun. I don't know when that'll happen. I would like to see it maybe in the summer because I think North Carolina is definitely cooler than Oklahoma. But my son's senior year, so swimming is important, and everything goes on with that. So there you go. I know I'm going long-winded on these. Oh, I hate that. Man, this thing goes way fast. Oh, I'm skipping a whole bunch. I can already tell you. Crud. What's your opinion on out of the box AFR enforcers versus the 062 Vortex on a mild 355? AFR enforcers, it's not even close. Any experience with a dual plane take where you have to cut holes in it, cut half to facilitate porting? My opinion on the dual plane porting is if you have to do all that, get a single plane. And you can add epoxy to that, and you can make some of these single planes wickedly good. I know this from Engine Masters, which I don't know if I've showed you pictures. Maybe you'd have to go back and look. If you saw the epoxy that was in the single plane and what I had done, you'd be like, oh my gosh, it worked out great. Good down low, good at the top. So, hi from LA, California. I hope you're not on fire. Seems like they keep talking about you guys burning up. Maybe you guys just not plant stuff. Would you port my L93 ram horn iron heads? No. Should you put a camphor on the quench pad on a small block Chevy head? I don't know, and that's one of the things I like to test. I don't do that, and I see people that do it, and I'm like, man, I don't know. I kind of like the sharp edge because I think it helps with wet flow because that's what I paid attention from Darren's classes. But I never dyno tested both ways. So I don't know. Okay. Thanks, Cameron Hill. Will it be okay to run valve springs that came with ProMax 215s on a saw roller? They are heavy, but a decent amount than what comp wants. I'd have to know more, but the answer to the question is yes. You can usually have more spring pressure, but it's not. That's a whole loaded question. I wish I could do a podcast, by the way, Daniel Powell. I've already told him this, but I think the two of us, this would be a perfect one for him because he'll say the same thing. You would think that if you add more spring pressure, oh, it's great. It helps with, you can rev farther because you got more spring pressure. You can if there's not enough spring pressure, but if it's too much spring pressure, you could actually cause it too because your push rods are going to deflect and they're going to give back that energy at some point. And when they do, you're going to valve float too. So not only did you lose power because of deflection, then you lose it from valve float from the too strong a spring. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's probably okay because I don't think their springs are that strong from the factory. I think they're at 245 or something. Always soften the quench pad. I need to test that. Bill Brennick, by the way, he is the reason why I have a 408 dyno mule. Can you tear down the stock small block study to see how the bearings and pistons fared? Maybe. Because it's at Dunsworth, and anything I ask to do, I have to pay for it. And it's not anything against Gary. Don't take it that way. The man's got to make money. We got to make money. I'm not going to do that. But the other part of me is like, I kind of want to do more testing before I tear it apart. So, but I should. Is there a date your bigger small block forehead head to come out? Which one are you talking about? If it's the one from ProMax, it should be out. I'm supposed to be getting that because I want to test out in the 4.8 dyno mule. This is not the one that's used for the cam challenge. It's just a matter of time. What happens if you run a high CFM head on an engine that does not need as much as 400 CFM at 60,000 RPMs, 550 horsepower, 496? Prime example, just look at your LSs. All of them flow more air than they probably need, especially the ported stuff. Usually you could just cam it down. It's really not the CFM, which sounds weird. Usually CFM, this is hard to explain to people. CFM is tied to size. So in general, if the port's bigger, it flows more air. So if you're like, well, I've got something that flows 450 CFM, well, that's a pretty good big port. Your targeting is the size of the port. So you take the size of the port you need for the engine size and RPM. And typically it flows a certain amount. Hopefully I kind of answered that. That would be interesting to test the 400 small block. I did see your video where 350 made 1,000 horsepower. You did. Yeah, I really do want to test that because I actually do think the 400 block would break. Awesome job with the small block. They are hard to break. Have you met with world product heads and compared them to aluminum? Long time ago, back with Yellow Bullet days, if you knew me from back then, you're like, that guy doesn't seem like he knows much, because I kept getting beat up on there because I just could not stand bullshit. So I kept saying stuff, but the thing about forums is you just had to get a lot of people, and still to this day, if you get a lot of people to believe you or back you up, then you must be the gospel. Because I cannot begin to tell you the number of people that I met off the forum and I found out they're fake as F. They're not real, but the forums would beat me up on that. But back in those days, I actually posted where the World Products heads on there, and they didn't flow that well. They weren't very good. I'm in Kansas. Are you interested in doing some Pontiac heads? No Pontiac heads, and I'll tell you why. I don't have which I don't know if you can see behind me, this fixture right here. I don't have for Pontiacs, and I don't do enough to justify that cost. Even if you did pocket porting video, the same as the LS3 head one for a 243 head, that would give me a fairly good idea. I would say this. Are you sure I didn't? I swear I did that video on an LS3 or on a 243. I'd say make your bowl 100%. So if you do a 202 valve, make it 202 wide and put the throat at 91% if you did my valve job. I don't know about yours. If you do a generic 45 degree, probably a bad idea. And then take out the bulge where the rocker stud is. It doesn't gain a whole lot of flow, but seems like it helps a little. Don't try to make that vein there, because a lot of people try getting all the way to where it's a nice point there at the valve guide. You can hit water underneath that. So shape it, yes, but realize if you go too deep, you'll get water. All right. Have you ever floated a 310 cane filled beef block Chevy head? Are they any good? I have not, so I can't answer that one. Oh, dang. Oh, man. The problem is, if I scroll down at all, it gets me way off. I almost had my wife come out here, but you want to talk about an angry woman trying to read this stuff? Oh, she'd be mad at me. All right, I'll double check your channel videos. Try to watch as much as your videos as I can. And I've got so many videos, so I understand if you don't watch them all. May have missed it over the last year or two. Probably should have thought to check Stan Wise. I don't know what that one's about. Do you do modular 2-valve head? Do a Ford modular 2-valve head challenge? Are you kidding me? No offense or offense. I guess it depends on how you look at it. I've got I haven't even got a tenth of the interest from the small block Ford cam challenge, and you ask them to do a mod cam challenge? What, all 4 people? No offense or offense. Vortec head challenge. This is a good thing. So this last week, a guy sent in a set of heads for me to do a valve job on. Thank you, business. Anyway, I get them all cleaned up, and I look at it and I'm like, man, this one's cracked. And I said, man, do you mind if because there's no sense in shipping it back. It just costs him like $30 to ship this head back, if not more, because of the weight. So you mind if I just take this head and I'll just play with it on a video? He's like, sure, absolutely. So maybe you'll see that. I have gotten those to flow pretty good. Eric, first of all, thanks for the time for us. I have a set of stock 243 heads. I'm asking, is it worth the time to grind the ski ramp out? My goal is 500 horsepower LQ9. Some of it, not all. Raymond Goshen, I have some new parts will be coming your way. Thanks, buddy. The turbo, they were intended for an 88X times 82 intake Borg Warner. I feel like when I say that, read that, I have a clue what that means on the turbo stuff. It's like when I'm talking to my wife about car stuff, right over her head. I don't port titanium heads. I would love to try that. That'd be Sparky. Eric, have you considered using the lifters that allow the intake to stay up in the small block cam challenge? Yes. So like a week ago, this guy calls me up and he's like, "Hey, I'd like to order a set of heads from you, like a Promax Project X." He's like, "Thank you for considering buying a heads from me." And he was talking about the lifters. Like, yeah, I got these set of solid lifters that they're the horizontal tie bars with the spring in it. And I instantly perked up. I was like, "Huh?" Yeah, they're brand new in box. They're from Crane. I was like, "Would you consider selling them?" And so maybe I'll get to buy those. And I know they're probably not the best for longevity, but ideal for the cam challenge. For those who don't know what I mean, if you went in the 90s or even the 2000s, you would have saw them. Doug Herbert used to have them in their catalog. It's got, instead of having a vertical tie bar that goes this way, they've got one that goes this way, but it's got a spring. So the lifters get pushed down when you tighten up your rocker studs or any of that, and pushes down the push rod, which pushes down the lifter. It makes contact with the cam. If you loosen that up, the lifters get raised up and they're out of the way, so you can pull the cam. In other words, it'd be just like doing an LS. It'd be amazing. Unfortunately, I don't have it. Is it true small block Vortec heads have raised runner compared to the older heads? They're not actually raised runner, they're just taller. Tom from Moss Landing, California. I won the Smoky Unit book and Circle Jack book. Thank you. There's still some I haven't sent to Dave, but I keep forgetting. I was supposed to have some that David Visor would sign, and they're sitting in the office, and I keep forgetting about them because there's so much other stuff that keeps detracting me. Port bump challenge. I don't port cast iron. Okay. Eric, what are your thoughts on the Gen 3 Hemi head design? They flow very well, but don't see many of them out there making great NA horsepower. I don't know, because that 5.7's sitting right there, and I think you should go watch the Engine Master Challenge from back in the day. Not their stuff that they did, but the competitions, because the Hemis kicked ass in A. I like steel rockers because they deflect less. Yeah, that's correct. Should be able to have a split screen stream with StreamYard. I think software is free. I need to sit down with Daniel Powell because he seems like a better wizard at this. But I hear you. I never thought, because I'm Gen X, when I was telling my parents how to work the computer, I never thought I'd be the one to be like, I don't have a clue how to do a lot of this. The only difference is I want to know, and they didn't care to know. How much do you believe 243 heads can support in a 5.7 stock from just a valve job? I don't know. I'm going to find that question out. Because the guy that works with me, his name's, or used to work with me, and it's not that I fired him or nothing. He has a full-time job, and he's just gone to that more, so he can't work at the shop as much. But anyway, he has a 5.3, and we're going to do some dyno testing with that, just because the internet says they make so much power with just a cam change, and I know that's baloney, but we're going to find out. You can stream anything you want with OBS. I don't even know what OBS stands for. Hydraulic roller recommendations. Yeah. I'm going to skip that one because that's a way long one to answer. AFR told me they wouldn't see any ET improvements from porting the 235s. Do you have any ET data from heads? That's baloney, for one. I've ported those. That's not true. They gain like 20 CFM. If I had to guess on the dyno, at least 30 horsepower. And if you don't gain power from that or go faster, that's a lot. That's a lie. The one thing you do have to worry about is water. Like the previous question that guy asked, like, what do you worry about? On the 245 especially, and even the 235 head, you got to be careful with water because you can hit them, especially on the lower side and the short side. When you spec a cam to a set of heads, do you take into account for how much the intake cuts down on airflow? Yes, if it's horrible. That's how much I give it credit for. But so if it's like really killing it, then I take more account. Rob, your thoughts on the AFR 300 oval 2300 valve? I flowed one. It's okay. It's okay. Cast iron is my kryptonite, Jerry Whaley. Oh, there we go. Thanks for answering the question about the Pro 1 Platinums. No problem there, buddy. And thanks for contributing. Keith Parks, have you ever tested Chad's? I won't answer that 23-degree stuff because here's why. And I probably even shouldn't say this in a live stream or nothing, but Chad and I used to be, I'd say we were definitely fighting back and forth for a while. And I gave up Facebook pretty much, and he kind of runs that there, and I've got my own YouTube thing, so I run it here. So we're amicable now. Like and I mean this, I think no matter what you do, you need to have someone that you have as a rival. And I wouldn't even consider him necessarily as a rival anymore. He's just another guy that does the same thing as me. But I think it pushes you further. And I think he probably would say it too. When we were having so many battles between both of us pushing each other, I think both of our games got better. So when I talk about the Rhodex Dragon Slayers on those short sides, is because it was like I'm going to crush him if they ever have to. And I'm sure he was doing the same thing with his profilers. But in fairness, he's a great guy. But if I told you the flow numbers on any of the stuff I had, it wouldn't be fair. And what I mean by that is, if they're great, you're gonna be like, yes. But if they're not, then you'll be like, oh, that's Eric's lying. But I think he does good work. So, and I wouldn't say that if I didn't mean it. But I wish him the best too. So I really would like to see him if he comes to Tulsa and runs stock or whatever, I would like to see him qualify well and do well. I truly do. Even though we're like, used to be ahead, I don't care. So, I mean, he's still a person and I like his passion, and that's pretty rare. Next one. Are there any of the Goodson off-the-shelf 5-angle 45 seat cutters very good? Porting my own closed chamber big block heads based on what I have learned from your videos. You ready for this one? Do you mind if I step away from the camera real quick? I'm so sorry, guys. I'm going to grab something because I'm going to answer that question. Oh, my legs hurt. There it is. And there's the other one. Okay. I'm glad you could hear me. I'm away from the camera, but I'm coming back. So, yeah, I'm going to answer this question because I don't mind doing that. I grabbed 2 cutters. I'm going to give you the numbers for them in just a second. All right. These are what I use for exhaust. And so if you're like, do you have some custom cutter for the exhaust? No, I do for the intake, and I won't share those. But this is the one I use for the exhaust. It's from Goodson. And this one's a narrow seat, so I don't mind it, but whatever. This is an FT-005B HP. That's the 45 degree one I use. Now this next one's a 50 degree, and it looks like an intake cutter, but I use it for the exhaust. And I'm going to tell you why I do that, because I blend in the angles anyway. So it's not a radius, but when I've done it is. And also I like that the top cut, for instance, if I ever have a 45 degree valve job and I go to a 50 degree on the exhaust side, this one seems like it fits in well. So you can use it or not. This is it's Goodson still. It's 5065B-HP. There you go. But I won't tell you my intake ones. Those took a lot of development. And those weren't, back then it was cheaper. It's really not at all cheap now. Is there such a thing as porting for flow versus porting for velocity? Yeah. It's certain people, and maybe I would say even, I think every head porter probably starts this way, especially when they get a bench. They port for flow. They're like, I want the biggest flow number. The head flows like a small block Chevy head. I remember this one guy who's like, I got this head that flows 360 CFM. I was like, wow, a small block Chevy low port, that's amazing. And then I got the head and flowed it. Yeah, it did that, but its low lift sucked. Also, the port was huge and had other problems. It would have been beat by a head that flowed 330. So it's best to port for velocity. You port for size, because size gives you velocity, and the size also tells you what it's going to flow. That's how it works. Is a big block cam challenge after the small block Ford? Yes, it is. I don't know when that's going to happen because I have even less parts for that. But I don't think I'm going to have as many people entered in that one, just because, not because there won't be as many interests, just because of time. I have a lot of small block 400 blocks if you're interested. I am if they were free, and not because I'm a cheap bastard, although I am a cheap bastard. It's because I got a lot of money spent on this testing stuff. Joe, have Joe, you have aluminum heads. Have Eric do you a valve job? Maybe he will. Okay. I don't even know what that is. Okay. Maybe I should have said, if you don't want people cheating on heads, do a poo head like a Mod 2V. Okay. For a small block Chevy, I have an Elder Block Performer RPM. Don't give me part numbers. I won't remember those. An Assault with good hardware and solid flat tappet for street. What is the best? The Assault. What's the highest horsepower you have seen from a 23-degree small block Chevy? The most ever on my customers, and in all fairness, this is not a fair question. It's really what the question they're asking is, what's the most power you've seen with the 23-degree? Probably some of Chad's stuff. And I'll say it's not the head, which, yeah, his head's great. It's the customer who's going to spin it. Because my customers in general are fantastic. But no customers come to me and said, I want to make, well, there is one. And we're still working on that project. Yes. If you're watching this, I'm waiting for it to get back from digitizing. You know who you are. It's very rare you have a customer that asks you to make a head that makes 900 horsepower for a 23-degree. They'll be, because if you quote them the price, they're like, oh my gosh, I could do a 13-degree thing. And you're like, yes, and then you can make 1,000. So I don't have an answer for that. For my stuff, the most I've ever known for a customer to make was 777, but that was on a 377 cubic inch engine. So that's pretty good, really good. On your dynamos, do you use flat top pistons or dome pistons? And what's your thoughts on compression ratios? So far, every one of my dynamo deals is flat tops. I mean, the reason why, I know you're like, well, why don't you run a dome? Because I keep switching heads. So the dome shapes are different. So in order to be able to test more heads, you run a flat top so that you can run them. So for instance, what I mean, like AFR heads require a different dome than a Brodix. Brodix domes are actually closer to profilers. If that makes sense. Oh, by the way, the highest horsepower 23-degree head that's ever been on Douglas dyno was mine. That was 731. We're probably going to break that soon. Big block Chevys. Do you like shaft rockers over stud rockers? Yes. Shaft rockers all the way. And I know it hurts when you buy them, but no one has ever gotten a shaft rocker and said, man, I wish I'd stuck with studs. It was your ProMax 225 CNC head I was talking about. Okay, on that one, like I said, Jason called me last week and they had 5 done. They were just putting the valve job on them. So I think they're really, really close. I really look forward to testing that head. I spent a lot of time in development on it, but the casting is the limitation on that. You would help me with the OBS and the stream for free. Great. I don't know how to get a hold of you though, Adrian. By the way, I'm the one who asked about the pricing on the BR7 heads with the stainless valves. Okay. If I ever move this, it's so hard to go back. I have had way too many LS guys thinking they were going to make amazing power with stock heads, and it never ends, especially the way they make them with cheaper and 2-barrel. And I go, okay, sure, LOL. I'll say this, since maybe there's some LS guys in here. If they're so great, how come there's not more of them on circle tracks? Because the modified class, they could run them. Maybe it's your oiling system that you said superior. I've heard that several times. So just saying. By the way, I get off rants, as you know. Salina in Oklahoma, so it's a ways from Pryor, Oklahoma. They have $100,000 A-mod race coming up in April. The guy that I used to work with and we were doing with, he just sold the car. It's such, of all the races we want to go to, that one. Let's see. Use the GM Performance link bar lifter stock roller cam to do the LS swaps. Not on a saw roller. Eric, having custom piston made for my 440 small block SP2, they're asking for intake and exhaust free fall. What is that? I'm assuming it's got something to do with fly cutting. Guys, do you mind just giving me just a second? I'm going to answer his question by showing him what it is. This is the 292 turbo head. I think it's actually here. Yes, it is. So this is free drop in case you're wondering. So you got a head and a flat surface. This isn't truly flat because it's tinted in because the head's sitting on it. So here we have an exhaust valve. When you ask for free drop, what they're asking for is they're going to ask you to take your caliper or whatever, you raise up your valve, and you're going to zero it. So 0, which I probably backwards, and then press it down till it touches the flat surface. Now you measure. That's your free drop, 125, which means that valve will move 125 thousandths before it gets to the same spot as your deck. That's what free drop is, and that's what they're asking. By the way, don't use this. You really need something flat. These bow in, so it makes you look like you got more than what you got. Eric, which is preferable, a closed chamber head with a dish piston or an open chamber head with a flat top piston? Both 11.5 to 1. Closed chamber. It's kind of depends on flow. That's a tough one. What size solid roller cam would you pick for 400 plus Ford? Joe, you kill me. I miss you, buddy. I do. The thing you guys don't know is like at Engine Masters when everybody's competing, because there's 5 days of it, really 4. We're all hanging out having a good time, but it's great. I miss those times. Thank you for taking my question. I learned yeah. Raging tight quench. I'd go for the tightest combustion chamber for the plug. What is the minimum seat width you suggest for a street strip? I don't know. Sometimes I push it and I'm thinking, this is going to be it. This is too thin. I'm going to have this come back. And then years later, the head comes back. I'm like, seems fine. I think you get away with the narrowest seat as long as your rocker arm geometry is great. If there's any deflection and that guide gets worn out, man, it's going to destroy your valve job. What do you think of Dave Visor's super quench mod for exhaust valve? I have no idea what it is. So I don't know. What heads are you going to use for the big block Chevy Cam Challenge, 496 or 540? That big block Chevy Cam Challenge, the hope is that it's going to be like a 582. And I've been trying to get a hold of AFR all week to try to get their 18 degree to do that. If not, I got my CNC SR20 heads I might try, or the DN9s. The catch is the exhaust rocker. I mean, the shaft rockers for the DN9s are just so freaking expensive. They're like, how could you say that? You sell parts. They're still $3,800. Retail is probably like $45. Do or would you expect a difference in cam for a lower or higher elevation, say per where you live in Vanderbilt? I would expect things to be different, yes. Oh, it burned me again. Thanks for your help and time tonight, Joe Carroll. No problem. Campbell, thanks for no problem. What small block Chevy EFI intake do you recommend that's the same size and height as a street Dominator? I don't even know what that is, but as far as the height is, I know what the manifold is, but I don't know what that height is. If you wanted to, and I used to recommend this all the time. If you want to do fuel injection, right, and you've got a manifold in mind that's carbureted, right, send it off to get ported, and then send it off to have the bungs put in for fuel injection. Then you're good to go. You don't have to buy another one. Okay. Small dome, small chamber versus big chamber, big dome. The small block Chevy 50cc versus 64. In that case, that's an easy one. The small chamber. It still has to do with flow because sometimes they really are shrouded, and then it hurts it. They run the Eimer LS engines in ARCA and some other series that are also LS based. But is that the stock LS engines that they're running in the short track stuff? I don't think it is. I know there might be some. I know people in the A mods, especially the track here, have tried, and it did not end well. I've seen low 700s many times on big cubic inch 23 US West. I was curious if 900 seems exotic. Thanks for answering. I don't think 900 is out of the question. You better have the money for it, though. Have you ever worked on any of the 60s big block Chevy aluminum heads? No. I'm just going to stop that question. No, because I'll turn them down. Because as a business, never work on something you can't replace. Because if you damage it, what are you going to do then? On the chamber size question, okay. How much flow increase should I see on a valve job on a 243 at the back cut on the intake valve? It already has a back cut from the factory, by the way. So from a valve job, peak maybe 2 or 3, mid lifts 5. What are your thoughts on the Smetting 3-3 short block? I saw one of your videos and you got someone sent for a dyno mill. It seems okay. Talk about the all-pro heads for sprint cars. Which heads are best? I hear the two. That's a loaded question. Because you wouldn't think about this, but you're like, oh, you want the head that makes the most power. Really, you want the head that makes the car go fastest. And some of the drivers don't drive the same. So, for instance, some drivers go faster with actual an 800 horsepower motor versus an 850 because they're able to hook it up. So they go. And I know that sounds crazy. And trust me, I cannot tell you how many 600 horsepower engines have kicked the shit out of 700 horsepower engines because they just hooked it up and they went. The other guys are just blowing it off. But good luck telling that to a customer who just hears horsepower. I'm not going to check out visored stuff. No offense to David, but I'm not. Port finish, smoother burr for most horsepower. In my opinion, from testing, it's been the 60 grit. Now, I might test again and it might say differently, but for right now, that's what I'm sticking with. Although there are parts of there you should put a burr finish to. At least that's what I do. Have you ever flowed a ported trick flow big black Chevy PowerPort 365 CNC head? I have not. I'll run out of questions, which means I almost get to end this. Alex Turley, on an IMCA stock class, will the heads flow more with 8mm valves? Yes. So what I mean by that is it depends on which class you're running. I'm assuming you're talking about B mod. For those that don't know, I think they have a different names for it, but B mods when they only have 2 heads you're allowed to run: the Dart SS head and then the EQ head. You can't do any porting. You could do a valve job, but if you run a smaller stem valve, some classes allow you, some tracks I should say, you'll gain more flow because the valve weighs less, so that's always a benefit. But you're taking up less area in the bowl, so it flows more. How much? I don't know. Speaking of which, I think it was David Black. This might be the answer to your question. You'd ask, would I go ask Dart why they're not making cast iron heads anymore? And I have the answer for that because I actually asked them. I just didn't put it in the video. So I asked them that, and they said this. It's not that we're not making anymore. They had a foundry that they were using, and that foundry said, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to stick with other stuff that makes more money. Could have been whatever. So Dart was kind of left in the lurch. So then they found this other foundry to do their work, but they're like, and this is going to seem confusing, but you could think like they have their own box that they make that makes cylinder heads, their own tooling. And then they go to this other foundry, and the other foundry is like, that's not what we use. We're going to have to modify your stuff. And evidently they modified it and damaged it, as in ruined it. So then Dart now has to go to the third place, and the third place is like, we totally can't use that. So we have to redesign a whole new box. And you're like, so? if it costs little amount of money to make a brand new set of cylinder heads and design it, people will be doing it all the time. It's very expensive, like $100,000 a pop. And actually, I think he said it was more. I think he said it's 500,000. Could be because it's cast iron. I don't know. But you got to think small block Ford, small block Chevy, all of those are a different box and another cost. So that's the delay. So they are trying to put them out, but until they get that settled, not to mention they're owned by private equity now. So you're going to tell me these investors that spend all this money to get this business, and actually they didn't spend the money. We know how private equity works. You go in debt, and then you put the debt onto the business that you took over. So now the business is in debt, and they got to pay off these loans to the private equity, and they're now going to somehow have money to invest in new tooling. From where? What are they going to do? Get a loan? They're already overloaded with debt. That ain't going to happen. So that's what's holding them back. What bowl size do you recommend on a 2-inch 243 for street use? I'd be 2 inches wide. No FTI in the small block Ford Cam Challenge. I am so glad you brought that up. That's Curtis. I think that's who you're talking about. So just like in the last Cam Challenge, just because you don't see a company entered the Cam Challenge doesn't mean they actually didn't compete at it. So for instance, which I don't know that Zach's paid yet, but ZSR is entered, and he works really closely with Curtis on camshafts. I know that, and probably some of the other competitors do too that I'm not aware of. But just because Ed Curtis didn't enter himself doesn't mean one of his cams won't be in there. Just because Bullet didn't enter doesn't mean maybe one of their cams wouldn't be in there. For instance, Cam Motion didn't enter the LS Cam Challenge, but there were 4 from Cam Motion in it. I hope that gets the idea. What's your least favorite head off the top of your head? My least favorite. Probably one I'm worried I'm going to hit water on. Trying to think. I'll come back to that. It'll hit me later. How much compression is too much for compression? I hear 14.5 to 1. You can go up to 16 to 1 is really how much your fuel could take. Can you briefly talk about a big block cam challenge? Will this be a 55 millimeter cam? Probably will be a 55 millimeter cam. This thing would be expensive because I want this thing to make some serious power in A. But it's so far down the road because I know a lot of you like tuning in right now to hear more about the small block Ford that's not currently going. So yeah, it'll be big. I want it to make a lot of power. Wow. I have a small block 406 with a set of Dart Pro 1 200cc intake runner, 570 saw roller, that's small. With that, I expect to make 500, 525. Do you think I can make the same power with the stock 6.0 with your head work at a big cam? Yes. Sadly, yes. You can go back and watch that video where I dynoed that LS3. That was literally a GM LS3 engine. Great one. I ported the heads and it had a GPI camshaft and then it hit 590. So yeah, it's not that hard. Will stock Vortec heads take a bigger valve? I have a 4.3 V6 I'm turbocharging. I would like to mess with a set of stock heads. Yeah, the Vortex will take bigger heads. Have you ever done any porting on 4-valve modular heads? No. You know what's funny is my son, and this sucks too. I love my son to death. But he has a Camaro. All right, we got him this V6 Camaro, right? He's got this Nova that I'm trying to give him for as a graduation gift. It may actually fire up within the next month. It's not a beauty queen by any stretch, but the kid loves Mustangs. I don't know how many videos I've shared with him about Mustangs at car shows wrecking. But he's also obsessed, for whatever reason, with the Coyote motor, the 4-valve Coyote motor. And he's like, have you done any stuff with that? I'm like, no, son. They're too small and they cost too much. So no, I haven't. I've never done any 4-valve stuff. Like a total learning curve on that. I think, by the way, you 4-valve guys are getting hammered by some of these head porter shops. So I've seen the pictures and I don't comment because I'm like, man, I don't look right. But you guys will spend big bucks on that crap too. I feel for you. What address on the turbo wakegates and blowouts should they be sent? Go to my website, wengines.com. You can see the contact me and see where to send them. Opinions. With the Brunix 11Xs, what's your thoughts on them? Do they flow well or work very well? They use those a lot in ASCS heads. They just have the ASCS in them. So they work well, but they're really dated. They only feel like 280. Thought that the entire idea behind the cast iron dart and world heads that they were made entirely in the US. They were only aftermarket cast iron heads for a long time. They are still made in the US, but they're just having a hard, again, there's not a lot of foundries left in America, all right? Let's face it, offshoring killed a lot of the stuff, both aluminum and cast iron. And the foundries that are here don't want to make a race car part that pays them jack crap compared to a military contract where they can make lots of money or other things that make more money. So, and I know it sounds weird because you're like, these heads cost me $4,000 or $5,000. What do you mean they're not making any money? They're just one part of the process. When I do IMC heads, they use 194 valves and they take all the way to the edge. You could get a 202 valve in. Yeah. Please always check the springs that come with any turbo parts. They should be checked for accuracy every time. Okay. What is your opinion on the new Holley high rim for small block Chevy? Have you done any flow testing on them? Do you think they would be much flow difference between the low version and the high one? I don't do flow testing on manifolds anymore because this is, you could probably go back and watch this video. Years ago, I used to do flow every manifold. I had a fixture I made for like flow manifolds. That was 2 years of wasted R&D. This would be in the Chad time too. Wasted because you could have a manifold. Like I got one in that was like beautiful, not from Chad or anything like that. Really fat dividers, flowed like a champ on the bench. Anyway, all I did was port it the way I had it, which made it flow worse on the bench. It made 30 more horsepower. Area trumps flow on a manifold. All right. IMC aluminum L98 heads lost art. If they ever had them. But by the way, I did just port match a Holley high ram. That I'll probably share that link in my share the pictures in my channel membership link. But no, I don't flow it. I think it'll outflow everything else? Probably, yeah. Tunnel rams will, period. What is the minimum port wall thickness do you like on aluminum LS heads, intake and exhaust? It depends on where. And I mean by that is if I was doing like a push rod slot, you could probably do 30, and that's really, really pushing it. It's probably right on the verge of having a blister or is blistering. But between the intake and exhaust valves, I usually like about 90. You could go down to 70, but I prefer to have 90. So see, it depends on where it's at. Flow bench, a voodoo, you'll be a fan. I love how I say, my son, my son. Hello, Michael Roberts. Sergeant's Garage, there's hope. My son had a 5.0 Mustang. Now he's got a 6.0 LS and a turbo 400. Don't give up hope. You know, he said too, this Nova, he's like, I want a turbo on it. That's what he wanted. He wanted twin turbos. That's why I have twin turbos to do the blow up that small block Chevy. It's because I was doing it for this. And then he tells me he wants this Coyote thing. I'm like, that ain't happening. I'm straight, so no. Your son is in the future, and as bad as I hate to say it, so is the Coyote. No, they are not. The LT is the future. It's a very impressive platform, but very high money. And that's the reason why I won't take off. If I had to guess, and I'm still trying to figure this out. Why the Hemi is not taking off more? Because you can get those way easier. I think I'm gonna try it. I think once that Hemi gets on there, I'm gonna probably have more people convinced. Probably because switch them is easy. Thanks for doing this. No problem, buddy. Tell your son to lead, not follow, meaning he leads in swimming. Getting a Cody Mustang is, well, kind of getting in line, following all the other swimmers. That's true. I bought a car with one 10-year-old plus 383 in it. It had some Patriot heads. on it, and they are worth messing with. Not anymore. I ported those back in the day. They're okay, but not anymore. Visitor did not think of porting the chamber flow into the exhaust. Okay. Port wall thickness at the bowl for the LS head to water jacket area. I've actually never broke through on water on an LS head. Thank God. Knock on wood. But I haven't found it. So I guess if you're going that far to hit water, you've probably screwed up. I'm going to give this about a few more minutes in case people want to comment or ask more questions, and I'm going to hang it up. So if you really want a question, you better get to asking. Otherwise, it's random me saying stuff. I don't even know how long I've been on it. 74 minutes. Okay. This is pretty awesome, Eric. Been watching your videos for a few years. I hope I'm entertaining at least. I don't know if you learned a lot this time, but hopefully I'm entertaining. I know it's not my looks. I want to see some Godzilla flow numbers. Me too. I don't even have the flow. That's that flow plate. I don't have the flow plate for that. And I actually tried to talk my son. It's like, if you want to do a Ford, Godzilla might be the better route. I'd better do that. But he didn't. He didn't like Coyote. Thank you, Snot Rocket. I think he saw one of your videos. Ugh. I hope Grubworm. Come on, Grubworm. Time to take up some people down. The problem with the Mustangs, too, I'm going to go on a random rant here. You Fox buddies have kind of ruined things. So, like, I've been going to throw down in T-Town forever. Well, not forever, but for a while. And it used to have a variety of cars. And then it became, you might as well call it, there's no LS Fest. It's Fox Body Fest. And I know that they're probably one of the better cars or easiest stuff to get with. But the lack of variety has made it not, I mean, if I'm seeing it, you got some kid that's like, that's a cool car. All the cars look the same. I don't care if you put a different front end. The cars look the same. They're only slightly different. So if the kid doesn't like the car, there's 20 other cars that look exactly like it. At least when before it was a variety. It's like a Camaro or something else or an Audi you could even have in there. Because I'm not even a foreign cars fan, but an Audi looks good. Hopefully you get what I'm saying. Can margin angle affect flow? Usually margin's 90. If you're talking about the edge brake, if that's what you have, that's different. What do you think about RFD big block Chevy headhunter heads? Remember I said before about Chad? I said I wouldn't comment on other people's stuff. It's the same situation. So Curtis, he was also one of the guys in the forum. Now he didn't beat me up too bad, but yeah, I actually have never seen his head on my flow bench, which is kind of surprising. I know one of the other guys here in town, and this is what I mean. There's people like to think, oh my gosh, you're on YouTube, or in the case of forums, you're on forums, so you must be the best. I will say this now, so listen to me closely. Just because I'm on YouTube and just because people are on forums a lot does not make them better than somebody that's not on YouTube or not on the forums. So there's a guy in Claremore. I won't say his name just because I don't want to offend him in case he doesn't want any more business or something. And he is a fantastic head porter. And you won't see him on the forum. You won't see him on YouTube. He just does his own thing. And he's a terrific head porter. But he's not on that stuff. So the thing is, I bet you it annoys the shit out of him too. That people are like, "Whoa, Eric said so and so," when he's like a professional and good too. So it's like almost insulting to him. And I think the same thing happens when people watch my videos. They'll go to their head porter, who's probably pretty good, and be like, I saw Eric Weingartner said this. So every time I try to do my videos, I'm like, hey, just use this as one piece of information, but not as the only piece of information. Because I used to be that guy where I kept getting, on the forum, so-and-so said this. And I was like, that guy's an idiot. And you believed him. But anyway, I'm not calling Curtis an idiot by any stretch of imagination. Okay. Have you ever flow tested the twisted carb intake on the Elder block made for a big block Chevy? Again, I don't flow test intake manifolds. Even back then, I haven't. The dyno would be a better one for that, but I bet it's Can't wait for the twin turbo small block testing. Me too. I have no idea what will happen. You should definitely do these live videos more often. Are you kidding? Like, how many people got watching? 124 people? Are you kidding me? Like, I'm glad that I got 124 people watching, but that ain't nothing. You know, I old man garage, right? He'll do like an announcement for something. They're giving away something, and they'll have like hundreds of thousands of views and stuff. And yeah, I'm a little jealous, but this isn't the same thing. I'm not giving away an engine, obviously, but 124 people, 25 moved up. And honestly, I'm also usually busy. Right now, my son's going to bed. I can already tell you because he's got to go to swimming tomorrow morning. Has to get up at 4:45 a.m. So usually I'd be inside like hanging out with him, but I got to hang out with him for a little bit today. It's what is easy to find. That's why I have a 77 Nova as well, along with 80 Thunderbirds and 79 Grandpa. You know, by the way, on this Nova, and I know I'm going to rant it. I tried forever to get him to get rid of this thing too. So, because what happened was this guy that used to work for me, Jose, he was selling the 477, which is now my blower engine, and he was selling the Nova, and I just wanted the engine. He's like, I got to sell both. There's no way my wife wants this car just sitting here without a motor in it. Like, okay. So I bought them together, right? And so then I was like, it's got a great cage and stuff in it, but the car is hideous. Bishop loved it. And I've tried repeatedly because that engine that's in it was meant to be in my sister's 88 Firebird that she had since she was 16. She's like, it's pointless. I don't know why I have this car. Tell Bishop he can have this car. Nope, he wants the Nova. The Firebird is so much better. Nope, Nova. The port wall thickness is only 200 thick on the LS head, so I take them 100% on the valve side bowler. I'm starting to get real thin, 40 to 60,000 to water jacket. Okay, I have yet to see one leak after, so I don't know. I never measure after. Usually, if there's a problem, I'll find out about it, and I haven't had one come through. My problem with Mustangs is 9 out of 10 people that I meet that I own one are complete douchebags. Maybe. I can't say that because, all right, there's this guy at the end of the block, right? He was on Street Outlaws too. I used to have 2 guys that were on Street Outlaws. This is back in the day whenever Street Outlaws, they competed against Tulsa. 2 of the Tulsa racers are here in this neighborhood, right? Or where one moved out. He used to have a Mustang, the Fox body one. That guy is good as gold. So it's definitely not all Mustang guys, for sure. Oh, yeah, come to think about it, the guy that did the Ford Dyno Mule, he's got a Mustang too, and that guy's good as gold too. So I don't know. I think it's, I don't know. Stock Coyote plus boost, 1,000 horsepower, easily. Just for the record, so did the small block Chevy with the 350. Stock rods and crank. So what's that prove? I don't know another engine you could say the same stock form. Oh, yeah, I just did. Do you think the small block Chevy short Holly EFI single plane intake is fully ported will make good power? I just did one, so I hope it's for you, so it should. How much would it differ from Victor Jr. or Super Victor? I'll say this, and I know you got that intake, and I think you might have got it because of the hood height. If you're really wanting to make power, the Super Victor would make more, but you'd have to convert it. That's the downside. The only other thing you could do is that Holly high ramp, which literally just got introduced. If that would have been an option, I'd say that's far better to do, especially on boost. Eric, as you raise compression ratio of the NA engine, do you think the exhaust side of the head, i.e., valve and port, should be different size area? I size them the same, even with compression ratios. I make the exhaust port as good as it can be, whether it flows, whether I have 16:1 or 9:1. I watched old Gale Banks twin turbo test from 11 years ago, the 427. His twin turbo setup. His turbo kits are discontinued. I know. I remember because I used to want one because that's before turbos took off and got really popular. What do you think? Oh, you stupid. I hate this computer sometimes. What do you think about the Herbert 260, 270, 605 solid roller cut up with the 250? It'll be fine. It's funny people are still running those Herbert cams. That was my first solid roller cam. I tried to find Banks Power Pressure Chambers. They had 4,500 flange. Can't find the part number. Called Banks Power, discontinued. Bill is the man. Don't get frustrated. Which Bill? Does your pricing run pretty consistent to the same one on small block Chevy or LS head? If so, can you say roughly? Yeah, I could say. I charge $1,400 to port a set of heads, whether it be LS, big block Chevy, which I think I should probably charge more for big block Chevys because they take longer to do. Or Ford, all of them are the same. That's the full port job. There's a cheaper one that I do. Some people prefer that one. Really, it's the question gets to not so much, man, that's a lot of money. It's can you wait that long? Because most of them are done by hand. I've had a 1977 Nova for 21 years, fourth generation chassis. Works very well for drag racing. I'm sure it will look very well for drag racing, but I don't think this is getting him any. Well, he's already got a girlfriend, but this wouldn't get him any girlfriends. John, what vintage Herbert wrench left? I don't know what that is. Oh, Dad, how dare you? Dare you? I'm not going to bring up that name. He didn't even enter the cam challenge and then bashed it to pieces. Machining and flow benches are easy when compared to a Sun. No lie. No lie. And if you think race cars are expensive, have a kid. You're like, oh, it's fine as soon as they're out of diapers. The formula, that's a lie too. Senior year is costing me a fortune. On a small block 400, do you want a 2-bolt or 4-bolt? I want to try both. I had a 4-bolt and I used it for a while and it never had a problem besides cracking the steam holes, which acted either way. That's a good test. That's a good test. I wonder if I put the rotating assembly into the 400 on the stock 400 block, say with the 4-bolt mains, if the block breaks but doesn't damage anything else, it just gives an obvious sign that something's wrong, it shuts off, then I can try the 2-bolt main. Okay. Eric, I appreciate your channel very much. It's very informative and I learned a lot. I thought the LS Cam channel was awesome and looking forward to others. Me too. Only downfall to the 4th gen Novas are they're pretty heavy. Yeah, it's getting heavier because I added sound deadening installation in his car. So that thing is going to be really heavy. You're giving away knowledge and I like to learn. You're doing great. Been reading the Smoky Unit book and articles. Need to get to build a circle track small block. I run an SY cross ram. Norman, what's the difference between the Superflow and Sane Yes? Well, besides price, the Superflow flows more. It's at 8 CFM higher, but that's not universal. There are some heads where I read exactly the same. Like, for instance, that Headhunter small block Ford head, I ported those several for ZSR. They flowed the same. But then I put on my Dragon Slayer right after it, 8 CFM better on that one. Small block Chevy, you had a cast iron heads. No, it had the AFR Enforcer heads, which are cheaper than getting a cast iron head redone. Is the Holley high ram small block getting tested at some point? I'd have to have one to test. And I wish I had an in at Holley. Because if I had an in at Holley, I'd say, hey, I've got a YouTube channel. And truthfully, I don't have a lot of subscribers. 38,000 is a lot, but it's not a lot. But if I had to test your Dominator ECU and some of your fuel injection and the wiring harness and the Holley EFI stuff, in the high ram, I could do some testing and I could compare it to the carbureted stuff. And it'd be great. But I don't have an in at Holley. So everything would have to be retail. And I don't know if you notice, it's kind of high. So I don't know when I get a chance to test that. Because I've only got a certain amount of money I could even use for dyno testing at all. And with the cam challenges, it's kind of limiting it. Do you change the exhaust port for nitro blower? I know you use better valves back in the day. I do use better valves. I still port the exhaust port the exact same way. Ported street ram by you good to 7,500 on a 406. I haven't tested that to find that out. I'm going to do that. The Coyote claim is you don't have to swap a cam. Coyote guys can make power and don't need to know how to do anything. That is the problem with the Coyote Mustangs, in my opinion. Maybe. 2-bolt 509 block, all stock. That'd be cool. Eric, can you go over the build specs of your 540 dyno mule? I can never find info on it, whether you're running a hydraulic or solid roller. Sure. It's got a Merlin block. They were nice enough to help me on that. No, it wasn't free, but I still paid, and they helped me on that. It's got a scat crank in it. It's got scat rods. It's got a Molly forged pistons. They've got a dome, but it's been milled off, which I can't even remember what the CC of that dome is now. But when it had the Pro Max heads on there, because the chamber was so small, it was like, I think it was close to 12.5 to 1. Right now it's close to 11 to 1 or 11.5 to 1. Currently it's sporting a set of AFR 385 heads, the Elba Brock, I have a hard time saying that word, 2896 that's only been port matched, and it has a solid roller cam in it currently, and comp cams, steel rockers on it. That's what it is now. It makes 941 right now with a 1350 carb. Okay. You said 570 was small, and I agree. But the Pro ones are untouched, and I think the flow numbers top out at 600 with the 1.6 rocker. Should be close, but that's just what I have. If that's what you have, you got to do it. You know what I mean? That's the thing. I don't know how many people's projects have gotten stopped because they thought it wasn't good enough. They needed this thing here to get. And then once they bought that, after saving up forever, they found out something else that was better that they had it. When they could have had it been running all along with what they had and been happy, and it would have been working well. So don't let the next best thing stop you from getting your project done. Just get it going, and then you could upgrade. Would factory Chevy exhaust ram horns affect flow? Yeah. I don't know why you would even do it. How do you pick a cam for an LS engine with decked heads to avoid piston? I don't. When it's like that and they're like, I've got stock LS stuff, I've got stock pistons, I don't spec the cams. That time I'll go, hey, GPI, or hey, Brian Tooley, you got a cam I can use for this? Because they're the ones that already measure that stuff. I ain't got no way to measure that. What do I need to do to an LS 240 heads to get the flow to continue 600 as they back up around 550? The porting and the bowl and the short side will help it carry, but it's still going to back up no matter what. But then it'll dip off, then it'll come back, usually higher than what you had before. On the 400 you need, is it standard or 30 over or 40 over? 30 over, because I have 30 over pistons. You ship internationally. Any interest in shipping overseas? I do not ship internationally, and I used to. I used to ship to Australia pretty regular. The custom stuff sucks balls, big balls. It sucks. So I had like someone mad at me because I wouldn't ship to Canada too for the same reason. I'm a one-man shop, so all the shipping is done by me. So we're like, how come I didn't ship the same day? Because one, I have to get the label ready, I have to get the boxing ready, I have to then drive to FedEx and drop it off. You're like, well, just schedule pickup. I'm not paying extra $10. You're going to pay an extra $10 for shipping? So whenever you do an international shipping, you got to do these the tariff forms or whatever it is. I can't even remember it all. There's all these stupid codes you got to have too for what the thing is, and none of them are for cylinder head. Harmonized code. That's what I was trying to get to, and it sucks. So after wasting 2 hours for one shipment, I got it done. It's stuck over there in Australia for like a couple of days. FedEx gets a hold of me and says, hey, they needed another invoice. I'm like, what do you mean? They had 2 invoices or 3 invoices I sent wasn't enough? And then luckily that guy paid the tariff fee. Otherwise, we're going to come back to me because some other form wasn't needed. No. So I will sell internationally as long as you find me a broker in America for me to ship it to, and then they can figure out how to ship it to you. I don't want any more of that. There are 200cc 202 heads. Honestly, I think the head and cam are small for 406. At least that's not my question. Would you be opposed to porting Duramax heads? Yes, I don't have the fixture to do it. And also that's 4-valve heads. There's people that specialize in that. I'm just not that guy. Thoughts on lightweight aluminum flywheel versus steel in the 4-6 race? It ain't worth your life, I'll tell you that. I do the steel. So how hard have you been running your Torque Storm superchargers? Do you recommend them, and how do they stack up? That little one, I have abused the crap out of. I shouldn't say that because I don't race it that much, but I have driven it around. The chassis dyno was over 7,500 RPM, so quite a bit. That was fun. I think they're great. Okay, let me put it this way. Go on the internet after you get done listening to me, because you shouldn't listen to me anyway. Go on the internet and type in Torque Storm supercharger failures and see how many you got up with. Now I'll do the same with other ones, because the reason why I bought the Torque Storm was they had a lifetime warranty at the time. Now I think it's like a year or something. But I want it to be reliable. I don't want it to break, because I know this other brand, which I won't mention, are known for breaking, but they make a lot of power, but they break. So what good does that do? I learned a lot from your channel. Thank you, Tom. Shipping between Australia and the USA is killed by import taxes and exchange rates. Yes, it is. I hate it myself too. What's your opinion on a Holly Hiram, the lower one, versus a Victor Jr. EFI? I would still take the Holly Hiram. Surdy or Newen single point CNC? Man, you must have some money if you're choosing between getting a single point cutter from Surdy or the Newen, because both are in the hundreds of thousands. Although, in all fairness, of all the machines in the shop, flow benches, the mill, my seat and die machine is the one that really makes money. That machine makes money. I shouldn't make like it's making me rich, but it's the only one. So, but still, at $100,000, it still would be like I can make a payment instead of making money. But I've heard way bad stuff about Newen, so I don't know if I'm the one to answer that one. So there's no cure for the 243 backing up around 550. Oh no, there's a cure. You can get it to go to 600, but then it's going to back up. And by the way, I've seen several people like, no, mine doesn't back up. It keeps going. Every time it's on my bench, same thing. Either one. It'll back up. So let's say it goes 300 at 600, because mine will usually go at least to 6 or 650. It'll back up. You go like, say 300 for a number, and then at say 650, it drops to like 290. But then at 700, that's at 301. And then it goes 306, 307, 310, 312, 320. Let's see. Great channel. Keep up the great work. You good flowing in Pueblo, Colorado. Thanks, buddy. So how would you port an Australian head when you like their heads? How do you get them to port? Usually the people in Australia, they'll buy ones from me, and then I send them there. But now I send them to a broker that sends them to them. Okay, I'm going to call it quits at 9:45. So if you have more questions for the 116 that's watching, I lost some. Oh my gosh. Now I'm down to 112. So questions, otherwise you're getting random rants. Are the Brodix Track 1 heads from the 2002 the same as the Track 1s they sell today? I don't know. If I saw them, I could tell you. Because they had ones, back in the day, they were 215s, and then they switched to 221s, which is what they currently had. They've had those forever. They're okay. I know they sell a ton of them, but if you had your choice, so I prefer if you bought heads from me, but let's say you're going to buy heads from Brodix, and they said, I want to get a Track 1. I'm sure their salesmen are like, hey, buddy, you know the Dragon Slayer? It's a better head, and it's like $100 more. You want to do that? You should say, yes, sir. All right, 5 more minutes and I am done. I've learned a lot from my channel. Great. That I'm running for governor of Oklahoma. Hopefully that's it. Thank you for the chat, LOL. Dark Iron Eagle Platinum 230s. Have you ever tested those? Yes. What's the compression ratio on the LS? Currently, it's 11:9. Dragon Slayer 225 versus the Project X. Someone else has asked me that. So the Dragon Slayer 225 versus the Project X 215s. The Project X actually slightly outflow it. But I really think on the dyno, the Dragon Slayers are going to make more power because of the better shape. I should test that. But Brodix also, even though I have a great relationship with them and buy a ton of parts from them, they don't give stuff for free to test at all. They don't even give me discounts on any of the stuff to test. So like that Brodix intakes, that BN2000, I had to pay up for that. Nothing wrong with that. They got to make money too. It didn't help their sales having it on my channel. And that's probably the worst thing to say is like, hey, you probably won't sell more stuff. Even though in all fairness, I'm willing to bet that AFR sold way more of those AFR Enforcer heads after I started testing with them. I'm also fairly certain they sold more Elderbrock Victor Jr. intakes whenever I started testing with them. Also, Texas Speed, which has never contacted me, should probably send me a thank you letter because that stage 2 camshaft probably sold way more after all the dyno tests done with it. What do you think is best budget, 850 or 950 carb for 496? Do the 950. What's the compression ratio on the LS Cam Challenge? When the heads that were on the Cam Challenge, when the heads that were on the Cam Challenge when that was happening was 11.4 to 1. It's currently 11.9 to 1 because it's got AFR heads on it now. How do you like the direct injected heads? I still haven't floated them. It's behind me. I said that earlier in the video. Sorry, got sent Pro Max 317s and Speedmaster High Rise. Okay. Thoughts on Brodix Head Hunter small block Fords? Those are good. Really good. How do you feel about the minimum cross-section area? Is it an important thing to consider when buying cylinder heads and RPM goals? Yes, it's one of many things. The problem with people on the internet, myself included sometimes, is sometimes they overwhelm people with information and then they make one thing seem like it's the most important thing no one talks about, except for everybody talks about it, to make it sound like that's what you need to pay attention to. The problem with the cylinder head is, if you said, man, you should just buy it based on the minimum cross-section area. Well, you know that World Products head that I talked about earlier in this video? It had a great cross-section area. It was like 2.7. Fantastic. The head was 235 cc's, had a great cross-section area. The problem was it only flowed like 280 CFM. So you have a huge pinch that moves no air. You got the right pinch, wrong flow. There's too many things that make a difference. So the velocity anyway would have been the way down. So it's look at the size for your head. So the minimum cross section's it. Then you would look at other things too, but never just one thing. I bought a 400 that ate a cam for, I don't know. It's got a 624 heads and pin studs and have big valves in them. I'll give them if you cover the shipping. 624 heads. Are those the 305 heads, Frank Rizzo? Because if they are, maybe. Of course, I don't know how, like I said, man, the amount of money I'm spending right now on just to do the cam challenge, even though the competitors, luckily, with all their entry fees, if they all come in, they'll pay for the dyno stuff, but I still have all this other crap I'm going to buy. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying probably not a wise move to be spending a lot of money on other stuff for other cool testing, knowing I still have a big expense coming up. I bought a brand new Victor Jr. intake at a Pete swap meet for $175 after your test. The old one's never used. What head would you recommend for 370 cleaver? I would recommend a CHI head. Scott Mullen, thank you for all your shared knowledge and content. I hope to buy a top end. Me too, because I prefer to make some money at some point. Okay. Let me see if I can't leave you with a nugget of knowledge. I used to tell that to my kids when I taught. Let's see. I'll give you one thing to help you out. Yeah. So, see if there's any questions real quick. Down to 104 people watching. So, what last thing I could help you? I'll do this. Whatever you're porting, because I know a lot of you watch for my porting stuff. One of the mistakes that people do is pretend this is your bird or whatever you're using for your grinder. What a lot of people like to do is they like to go back and forth when they're grinding. Don't do that. So if you're wanting to get a better shape and stuff and you're trying to get things right, don't go back and forth in any area. The reason why is because what ends up happening is you're digging the two spots where you're stopping going back and forth. what you need to do is, it might look that way if you ever watch me port. It looks like I'm going back and forth, but really what I'm doing is I'm setting down, going across, up, this way, like that. I'm not going back across. So I'm actually lifting it off and then going back, but it's so barely off that you never even notice. That will make your ports smoother in shape. They won't have these dips in them. So do that as you're porting. It will take longer. Your ports will be more consistent in shape and stuff. Hopefully that helps you guys. Thanks for watching. This is a long enough one. My butt's numb, and I appreciate all of you that have watched. Hopefully you watched the beginning. I was joking around saying that maybe I'd run for governor. I know it sounds stupid, but I'm just going to end you with that one because this is funny. I told my wife I wanted to run for governor because I really talked about those three things: the end of tipping, like you couldn't tip if you walked up to order something. The telemarketer, which is driving me right up the wall. Not kidding. Today I got like 18 calls from telemarketers, and then no trucks in the fast lane. She's like, "That's stupid. Why would you? You're not going to win." I know. I was like, "I know." Do you guys remember the Tiger King? The Tiger King was from Oklahoma, right? And it's the gay guy that you saw the stuff on Netflix. He was running for governor. I don't know if you knew that or not. He was on a debate stage and asking real questions. And the thing is, I felt bad for him because I'm like, I felt bad for it in this way. The things that he was asking is like he was going to do. I was like, all the people of Oklahoma actually would like to have seen happen instead, but at least he got it brought up. So if you get on the stage, and there's a guy, probably our next governor will be that Gintner Drummond dude. But at least if I got on the stage, I'm like, hey, what are you going to do about these spam calls? Huh? What are you going to do? And the people in Oklahoma are like, get out, because I just got 5 today. And then, like, they're driving on the highway, and they're going to turnpike, and you're stuck behind that semi that's going 65 and a half mile an hour, trying to pass someone else going 65. You're like, I got to be somewhere. Pass them. And then you come up the hill, like, oh, here we go again. That would be solved. And you're like, oh, my gosh. They're asking me for a tip. Because the worst one I ever saw was I was at Indianapolis at PRI. Go to Steak and Shake there. They have these kiosks. And you order your food there. And it asks if you would like to tip. And then you don't even talk to someone. You're ordering from a kiosk. And then they call your name to get your food. You pick up your food. And then you throw away your food. But on the kiosk, it asks if you want a tip. A tip for what? I'll give you a tip. Stop doing that. So I was like, man, I'd like to run for governor just so I could get on the debate stage and just, because everybody in Oklahoma would be like, that dude's right. We need that. But I think it's only $1,000 to run for governor. It's the dumbest idea ever. But I sure hate spam calls. Anyway, guys, it's late enough. Thanks for watching. Run out Port Cast Iron Head. You guys? Oh, no Superman 2. You guys take care. Oh, man, my legs hurt.